Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that the invisible walls protecting your job, your business, and your entire way of life have just simply vanished overnight.
Yeah, the geographic borders that, kept your local economy safe are just completely gone.
Right. Would you be terrified or absolutely thrilled?
I mean, it's the kind of premise that completely reorients how you look at your own daily routine, especially when you realize, uh, it isn't really a hypothetical scenario anymore.
No, it is a reality. Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. We are so glad you are here with us to unpack this today.
It's going to be a really fascinating one.
Oh, for sure. And before we jump in, if you love having those sudden light bulb moments that change the way you see the world, make sure you hit subscribe on the BookSnap channel so we can keep exploring these massive shifts together.
Definitely do that.
Because today we're exploring a groundbreaking idea that claims the global playing field has been completely leveled. It's a new reality where geography no longer dictates your success, and the tools of massive empires are now sitting right in your pocket.
Yeah, but we have to ask, does this new landscape mean equal opportunity for everyone, or is it just a new kind of ruthless competition?
Exactly. And that tension is what makes this topic so incredibly vital. We are looking at a fundamental rewiring of human commerce and collaboration here.
We really are.
So to understand how we got here, we are unpacking Thomas Friedman's 2005 Pulitzer Prize-winning book, The World is Flat.
Such a classic.
It is. And the mission of this deep dive today is to really unpack Friedman's bold thesis. The idea that digital and technological evolution has essentially erased geographic barriers, allowing individuals around the globe to, compete and collaborate on a scale we've never seen in human history.
Right. And what's fascinating here is that Friedman isn't using the word flat to mean that we've regressed to some pre-scientific understanding of the solar system.
No, he's not a flat earther.
Right, exactly. He uses flat to mean leveled, like a leveled playing field. But to truly grasp the mechanics of this flattened world, we can't just look at the technology we have today. We have to look at the history of how the globe kept shrinking to get us to this point.
Yeah, because this wasn't an overnight phenomenon. It was a very long compounding process.
Yeah.
Let's unpack that history a bit.
So Friedman frames the history of globalization in three distinct eras, and the key distinction is really about who holds the power in each of them.
Okay.
He starts with Globalization 1.0, which runs from roughly 1492 to around 1800.
So the age of discovery.
Exactly. In this era, the primary actor driving global integration was the nation-state. The world shrank through geographic discovery and, transcontinental trade.
Right.
But the limiting factor was physical power, literally how much wind power or horsepower your country had to cross oceans and move resources.
Okay, let's unpack this. So Globalization 1.0 is essentially the era of nations and empires expanding their physical borders using muscle and canvas.
Spot on. Then we shift gears into Globalization 2.0, which spans from about 1800 to the year 2000.
Okay.
And here, the center of gravity moves away from the nation-state and toward the multinational corporation. Driven by the Industrial Revolution, the world kept shrinking, but this time through the sheer force of hardware.
Right, like steam engines, railways, and eventually telegraph cables and massive cargo planes.
Precisely. Those transportation and communication technologies made it possible for a company to have its headquarters in London, right, but do its manufacturing all the way in Mumbai.
Wow, yeah.
However, the barrier to entry was still astronomical. You needed massive capital to lay those telegraph lines or build those factories. You still had to be a giant corporation to play the game on a global scale.
So if I'm thinking about this, Globalization 1.0 and 2.0 are kind of like a game of Monopoly, where only countries and massive corporations are allowed to even roll the dice.
Yes, that's a great way to look at it.
But then Globalization 3.0 comes along, and suddenly someone kicks the door open and hands a pair of dice to everyone.
That is a perfect visualization of the power shift. In Globalization 3.0, the primary actor is no longer the nation or the corporation. It's the individual.
The individual.
Yeah. The digital revolution meant that everyday people suddenly had the power to plug into the global economy without needing to own a factory or a fleet of cargo ships.
But what exactly caused this massive shift to individual power? I mean, we didn't just collectively upgrade our computers and suddenly inherit the logistical power of a multinational corporation.
Oh, definitely not.
There had to be some mechanism that suddenly allowed, like, a freelance designer in Cairo to compete with a massive agency in New York.
Right, and you're touching on the exact causality of the book. It wasn't one single invention. Friedman argues it was a very specific, perfect
A
storm.
perfect storm.
Yeah, convergence of historical events and technological leaps that accidentally overlapped and amplified each other.
Yeah.
He identifies 10 specific forces, or flatteners as he calls them, that created this new reality.
Okay, let's group these forces together because I feel like just reading them as a simple list doesn't do justice to how they interacted.
I agree completely.
From what I understand in the sources, the first major catalyst was actually political, right? Not technological.
Yes, the initial setup for a flat world required breaking down physical and ideological walls, starting quite literally with the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989.
Right, the Cold War ending.
Exactly. This wasn't just a victory for democracy, it was a profound economic shock.
Because suddenly, a massive chunk of the planet that had been walled off was just open for business.
And not just open for business. I mean, it unleashed millions of highly educated, incredibly hungry workers from the Soviet bloc and eventually India and China into the global free market.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you had this sudden massive influx of brain power that was willing to work for a fraction of Western wages. But all those brilliant engineers in Prague or Bangalore couldn't actually participate in the global economy if they couldn't connect to it.
Which is where the second part of the setup comes in, right? The internet.
Specifically, the web browser.
Right. Netscape goes public in 1995, and suddenly everyone has the exact same digital window to look through.
It provided the wiring. So the fall of the wall provided the talent pool, and the internet provided the global platform.
Yeah.
But as you hinted at earlier, just having a web browser doesn't mean your computer in Cairo can actually coordinate a complex manufacturing project with a server in London.
Right. The wirings is completely useless if the systems are speaking different languages. If my accounting software can't talk to your inventory software, we aren't really collaborating. We're just sending frustrating emails back and forth.
Which brings us to the third force, the software layer that truly flattened the world. Friedman highlights workflow software as a critical force.
Workflow software.
Yeah, this is the invisible behind-the-scenes magic. It's the standardization of protocols, like HTML for web pages or SMTP for emails.
Oh, I see.
It meant that diverse software programs could suddenly seamlessly interact without any human intervention.
You know what that makes me think of? The invention of the standard shipping container in the 1950s.
Oh, that's an interesting comparison.
Yeah, because before the shipping container, moving cargo was incredibly inefficient. Every box, barrel, and sack was a different shape.
Right. Loading a ship must have been a nightmare.
It took weeks. But once everyone agreed on a standard steel box, it didn't matter what was inside or whether it was on a truck, a train, or a ship. The infrastructure just handled it. Workflow software basically did the exact same thing, but for digital work.
That is a brilliant analogy. Workflow software was the digital shipping container. It allowed a company to chop up a complex project, send the design phase to an agency in Europe, the coding to a team in Asia, and have it all seamlessly reassemble on a server in North America.
That is wild. And once you standardize the container, you also unlock the power of the crowd, which introduces the fourth force, what Friedman calls uploading, or the open source movement.
Right. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the open source movement completely disrupted the idea that innovation had to come from a corporate lab.
Oh, for sure.
You had thousands of individual programmers worldwide collaborating for free to build software like the Linux operating system or the Apache web server, which literally powers a huge percentage of the internet today.
It's amazing.
It really proved that a decentralized network of individuals could build tools that rivaled the biggest tech monopolies.
So we have the geopolitical walls down, the internet wired, the workflow standardized, and individuals collaborating globally.
Yes.
This perfectly sets the stage for how corporations fundamentally change their behavior to exploit this new flat world. Let's talk about the specific mechanisms of that corporate shift.
The sources outline 4 distinct corporate behaviors that became possible, which are the next 4 forces: outsourcing, offshoring, supply chaining, and insourcing.
Okay, let's draw the distinction between outsourcing and offshoring first, because I feel like people conflate those all the time.
They really do, but the mechanism is very different. Outsourcing is taking a specific, localized task, like, say, payroll or a customer support call center,
Right.
and handing it over to a specialized third-party company in another country where labor is cheaper. But the quality remains high due to that standardization we talked about.
Got it. So just moving the task.
Exactly. Offshoring, on the other hand, is when a company takes its entire physical operation, say, a whole manufacturing plant, and physically relocates it to another country to integrate into a more favorable economic environment.
Ah, okay. So you move the task versus moving the factory.
Yes. But neither of those works without extreme precision. Which brings us to supply chaining. Friedman points to Walmart as the ultimate example here.
I mean, their logistics are legendary.
Walmart's supply chain is a marvel of flattening. It isn't just about buying in bulk. It is a hyper-efficient, technologically integrated conveyor belt.
How so?
Well, when a cashier scans an item in Ohio, that barcode beep sends an immediate, automated signal to a supplier in Shenzhen, China, to manufacture a replacement.
Wait, instantly.
Instantly. There is no middleman, no massive warehouse sitting on dead inventory. The entire world becomes one synchronized assembly line.
That is unbelievable. And then we have the craziest corporate behavior, which has to be insourcing.
Oh yeah, insourcing is fascinating.
Because at first glance, it just sounds like hiring a consultant, right? But it's far more invasive than that.
Much more invasive. Insourcing is when a specialized logistics company actually steps inside another company to take over their internal operations.
Give me an example of that because it sounds crazy.
The classic example Friedman uses is UPS and Toshiba.
Okay.
If your Toshiba laptop broke, you didn't actually send it to Toshiba to be fixed. You dropped it off at UPS, UPS flew to their own massive hub, UPS employees who were certified by Toshiba repaired the laptop, and UPS shipped it back to you.
Wait, really? UPS fixed the laptops?
Yes. The logistics company basically acts like a specialized transplanted organ inside the host company. UPS became Toshiba's repair department.
That completely blurs the lines of where one company ends and another begins.
Exactly. Which is only possible because workflow software allows their internal databases to communicate flawlessly.
Wow. Okay, so we've covered the setup, the software, and these corporate behaviors. But what supercharged all of this? Because what we just described is powerful, but it's still mostly happening on desktop computers in corporate offices.
Right, and this is where we hit the final layer of flattening. The ninth force is information and amplification, or informing.
Search engines.
Yes. The rise of Google gave every individual on the planet autonomous access to the world's knowledge. You didn't need to navigate corporate hierarchies or, have access to elite university libraries to find data anymore. Google leveled the research playing field.
And then we inject the final force, the steroids.
The steroids. This is the piece of the puzzle that takes everything we just talked about and untethers it from the physical desk.
I can take this one because this is literally the world we swim in today.
Go for it.
The steroids are the mobile devices, wireless networks, 5G, and cloud computing. It's the realization that I don't need a dedicated server room to run a global enterprise anymore. I can just rent server space from Amazon Web Services by the second.
Exactly.
I can manage a global supply chain, coordinate with an open source development team, and launch a product while sitting in a coffee shop using my smartphone.
It's wild when you think about it.
It is. The steroids take the flat world and make it mobile, constant, and infinitely scalable.
You've hit the nail on the head. The processing power and connectivity in your pocket right now dwarfs what multinational corporations had at their disposal 30 years ago.
That is a massive list of forces, and it sounds incredible on paper, but I have to ask, is there a difference between just having a smartphone and actually being able to compete with a massive tech company in Silicon Valley?
That is the big reality check.
Right. Having cloud access doesn't automatically make me the CEO of a global empire. The tools might be equal, but the people wielding them aren't. So what does this hyper-connected, fully optimized global conveyor belt actually mean for the listener right now?
It creates a dual reality, a world of unprecedented opportunity paired with a pretty severe existential threat.
How so?
Well, if you are a knowledge worker, someone who creates, innovates, or designs, the flat world is a utopia. Your market isn't your local city anymore. Your marketplace is the entire planet. You can sell your specialized skills to the highest bidder globally.
Here's where it gets really interesting for you listening. Think about your actual daily job.
Yeah.
Think about the device you're using to listen to us right now. The components were mined in Africa, assembled in Asia, designed in California, and the software was likely patched by a team distributed across Eastern Europe and South America.
A truly global product.
Exactly. The geographic borders in that device just do not exist. But that also means the geographic borders protecting your specific job might not exist either.
And that is the existential threat. It's kind of like a game of global musical chairs.
Musical chairs.
Yeah, think about it. Before, you were only competing for a chair with the people in your local neighborhood. Now the music never stops, and thousands of highly motivated, highly educated people from entirely different continents are constantly rushing the floor.
Wow.
If your job can be digitized, codified, or automated, you are no longer safe just because you live in a wealthy country.
So if the music never stops, how do you make sure you don't lose your chair? Ask yourself right now, are your skills adaptable, or are they just repetitive tasks waiting to be outsourced to an algorithm?
It's a tough question. And according to the sources, the ultimate shield against being automated or outsourced is education.
Okay, but we have to fundamentally rethink what education means, right?
Absolutely.
Because a 4-year college degree depreciates in value the minute you walk off the graduation stage today, much like buying a new car.
Precisely. The half-life of a learned technological skill is shrinking rapidly. In a flat world, education isn't an event that just ends in your 20s. It is a mandatory mechanism of lifelong, continuous learning.
You have to learn how to learn.
Yes, you have to constantly re-skill to stay ahead of the software that is actively trying to commoditize your job. And this applies at the macro level, too.
What do you mean?
Nations that fail to invest heavily in scientific research, infrastructure, and continuous tech education will simply be routed around by the global network.
They just become a dead zone on the digital map.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for geopolitics, then? If a nation's power is no longer just determined by how many tanks they have or how much oil is under their soil, how do countries actually compete today?
This raises a really important question about the modern balance of power. In Globalization 3.0, physical military might is taking a backseat to network dominance.
Network dominance.
Yeah, power is now heavily weighted toward a country's ability to innovate, to attract brilliant minds, to protect its intellectual property, and to prevent brain drain.
Right.
A nation's true geopolitical leverage is how deeply it is embedded into the global supply chain, making it economically indispensable.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here, especially looking at this through the lens of recent years.
Go for it.
The flat world narrative sounds incredibly smooth on paper, but reality feels awfully bumpy. I mean, we've seen massive supply chain crunches, tech cold wars, tariffs, and rising nationalism.
Oh, absolutely.
So if the world is flat, why do some regions still feel like they're trapped at the bottom of a canyon? Does having high-speed internet actually solve systemic inequality, or does it just make the race run much faster for those who are already in the lead?
That is the exact critique leveled against Friedman's work. The sources highlight that many critics argue the book exaggerates the equal opportunity aspect.
Right, because it doesn't feel very equal.
The reality is that the actual distribution of physical wealth, healthcare, and baseline infrastructure remains deeply unequal. In fact, many argue that globalization has given wealthy nations faster, more efficient tools to extract value from the global south.
Widening the inequality gap rather than closing it.
Exactly.
So the flat world is really just a frictionless surface for the elite to slide across while everyone else struggles to find their footing.
That is the heart of the pushback. But to be fair to Friedman's actual thesis remaining entirely neutral on whether he is right or wrong, he doesn't actually claim the world is perfectly just, or that outcomes will be egalitarian.
Right, he isn't promising a utopia.
No. His core argument is simply about access to the tools of creation. Before, the tools required to build a global business were guarded by massive corporate gates. Today, those tools, cloud computing, open source code, global logistics networks, are available to anyone with an internet connection.
So the starting line might still be staggered by historical wealth, but the barriers to entry onto the track have essentially vanished.
Exactly. The invisible walls really are gone.
We have covered an immense amount of ground today. We moved from the era of empires relying on wind power, through the heavy machinery of the industrial age, all the way to individuals wielding cloud computing to compete on a global stage.
It's been quite a journey. And if we synthesize all the sources, the ultimate takeaway is a profound need for adaptability.
Adaptability.
Yes. The borders that used to define economies and limit human potential are no longer drawn on physical maps. They exist on computer screens and fiber optic cables, and in the speed at which we can process new information. Success in this landscape demands ultimate flexibility and an absolute commitment to evolving alongside the technology.
It really makes you look at your own skill set and your own community in a completely different light.
It does.
And it leaves me with one final, slightly unsettling thought for you to chew on today.
What's that?
Well, if our digital tools have truly erased borders and our economic lives are now lived entirely on a flat global network, how long until our local laws, our physical passports, and even our traditional governments become completely obsolete?
Wow.
What happens to your identity when your digital footprint and your online reputation hold vastly more weight than your actual nationality?
That is the frontier of a truly borderless flat world. We are transitioning from citizens of a country to nodes on a network.
Imagine waking up to that reality. Thank you so much for taking this journey with us today. If you enjoyed unpacking this flat world and exploring what it means for your own future, please don't forget to subscribe to the BookSnap channel so you never miss out on our next big exploration.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Until next time, keep questioning the world around you.